Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a story that's got a lot of people worried, the impact of staff cuts at the Food and Drug Administration. Now, I'm not talking about minor adjustments here. We're talking about potential risks to the very food we put on our tables and the medical devices we rely on. What happens when the watchdogs are taken off the beat? Is our health at stake? That's what we're going to unpack today. Stick around because the answers might surprise you and, frankly, might scare you a little. Did these cuts really happen? What was the real reason? And what can we do about it? Let's get into it. Alright, so here's the deal. According to a report by the Associated Press, the Trump administration, in a move to reduce the size of the federal workforce, implemented staff cuts at the FDA. This happened a while ago, but the ripples are still being felt. Specifically, recently hired employees responsible for reviewing the safety of food ingredients, medical devices, and even tobacco products were let go. Think about that for a second. These are the people who are supposed to be our first line of defense against harmful substances and faulty medical equipment. And they were fired. It's like taking the goalie out of a hockey game and expecting to win. The total number of positions eliminated wasn't initially clear, but the focus seemed to be on the Centers for Food, Medical Devices, and Tobacco Products. It was unclear if drug reviewers were also affected, but the lack of clarity adds to the uncertainty and concern. This wasn't an isolated incident either. There were expectations that the Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees the FDA, NIH, and CDC, would fire thousands of probationary employees across its agencies. To put things into perspective, there were talks of potentially 5,200 probationary employees being laid off across HHS agencies. The CDC alone was looking at nearly 1,300 layoffs, although the actual number of notices received was closer to 700. Thankfully, those layoffs didn't affect the Epidemic Intelligence Service, which is crucial for tracking diseases. But still, hundreds of people lost their jobs, and the FDA, with nearly 20,000 employees, was a key target. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Robert Kennedy Jr., the newly sworn-in health secretary at the time, had been a longtime critic of the FDA, accusing them of waging a war on public health for not approving unproven treatments. He also called for eliminating thousands of chemicals and colorings from U.S. foods. So, you can see how these cuts align with his views and raise questions about the motivations behind them. Was this a genuine effort to streamline the agency, or was it driven by a specific agenda? The cuts at the FDA included staff responsible for reviewing the safety of new food additives and ingredients. This is incredibly concerning. We're talking about the potential for harmful substances to slip through the cracks and end up in our food supply. Now, some might argue that the FDA is bloated and inefficient, but consider this. Nearly half of the FDA's $6.9 billion budget comes from fees paid by the very companies they regulate. This allows the agency to hire extra scientists to swiftly review products. Eliminating these positions doesn't actually reduce government spending. It just weakens the agency's ability to do its job effectively. It's like paying for a security system and then disabling half the cameras. What's the point? What happens when these new food additives aren't properly tested? What happens when medical devices bypass rigorous testing? What happens when the ingredients in your vape aren't monitored? According to a former FDA official, cutting recent hires could backfire significantly. These staffers tend to be younger and possess more up-to-date technical skills. The FDA's workforce, as it stands, skews towards older workers who have spent decades at the agency. The Government Accountability Office has even noted that the FDA has historically faced challenges in recruiting and retaining staff due to better pay in the private sector. Peter Pitts, a former FDA Associate Commissioner under President George W. Bush, emphasized the importance of bringing in new blood, people with fresh ideas, greater enthusiasm, and the latest thinking in terms of technology. Cutting these new hires is a step backwards, undermining the agency's ability to adapt to new challenges and technologies. It's like trying to run a modern tech company with outdated equipment and a workforce that doesn't understand the latest trends. You're setting yourself up for failure. The FDA needs to be at the forefront of scientific advancements, not stuck in the past. Mitch Zeller, former FDA Director for Tobacco, didn't mince words, calling the firings a way to demoralize and undermine the spirit of the federal workforce. He warned that the combined effect of these actions would destroy the agency's ability to recruit and retain talent. Think about the message this sends to potential employees. Come work for us, but be prepared to be fired at any moment. It's not exactly a compelling recruitment strategy. The FDA's inspection force has been particularly strained in recent years, especially after a wave of departures during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of the current inspectors are recent hires, and it was unclear whether they were exempted from these cuts. The FDA inspectors are responsible for overseeing thousands of food, drug, tobacco, and medical device facilities worldwide. The AP reported that the agency faced a backlog of roughly 2,000 uninspected drug facilities that hadn't been visited since before the pandemic. How can the FDA possibly catch up with this backlog if they are losing inspectors? It's like trying to bail water out of a sinking ship with a teaspoon. The FDA's inspection force has also faced criticism for not moving faster to catch recent problems involving infant formula, baby food, and eye drops. These are serious issues that directly impact the health and safety of vulnerable populations, like babies and young children. The infant formula shortage, for example, was a major crisis that left parents scrambling to find safe and reliable sources of nutrition for their children. The FDA needs to be proactive in identifying and addressing these problems, not reactive. Cutting staff only exacerbates these issues and puts more people at risk. We can't afford to have an FDA that is understaffed and under-resourced, especially when it comes to protecting our children. The real question is, how do we hold the FDA accountable and ensure that they have the resources they need to do their job effectively? Now, let's talk about a potential conflict of interest. As I mentioned earlier, nearly half of the FDA's budget comes from fees paid by the companies they regulate. Some argue that this creates a situation where the agency is beholden to the industries it's supposed to be overseeing. This is what's known as regulatory capture, where the regulators end up serving the interests of the regulated. If the FDA is too reliant on industry funding, it may be less likely to take actions that could harm those companies' bottom lines. This is a serious concern that needs to be addressed. We need to ensure that the FDA is truly independent and able to make decisions based on science and public health, not on financial considerations. How do we ensure the FDA is neutral and unbiased? Is there a different funding model that would work better? The FDA has been trying to modernize its processes and embrace new technologies, such as artificial intelligence and machine learning, to improve its efficiency and effectiveness. For example, the FDA is exploring the use of AI to analyze large data sets of clinical trial data to identify potential safety signals and speed up the drug approval process. They are also using AI to improve food safety inspections by identifying patterns and predicting potential outbreaks. These modernization efforts are crucial for the FDA to keep up with the rapid pace of technological change and to effectively protect public health. One example is the use of natural language processing, NLP, to extract information from adverse event reports, allowing the agency to identify potential safety issues more quickly. Another example is the use of machine learning to predict the risk of foodborne illness outbreaks based on factors such as weather patterns and food production practices. These are critical areas where new blood, with up-to-date technical skills, are needed, referencing the paper Artificial Intelligence in Food Safety by Cameron Hamid et al., published in Comprehensive Reviews in Food Science and Food Safety in 2022, which highlights the transformative potential of AI in this domain. This is why cutting recent, tech-savvy hires makes absolutely no sense. It's like trying to win a Formula One race with a horse and buggy. Now, let's consider a different perspective. Some might argue that the FDA is too bureaucratic and inefficient, and that these cuts are necessary to streamline the agency and reduce wasteful spending. They might point to examples of the FDA being slow to approve new drugs or being overly cautious in its regulations. They might also argue that the private sector is better equipped to ensure the safety of food and medical devices. While there may be some truth to these arguments, it's important to remember that the FDA plays a crucial role in protecting public health. We can't simply rely on the private sector to regulate itself. There needs to be an independent agency that is responsible for ensuring that food and medical products are safe and effective. Otherwise, we risk putting profits ahead of people's health. How can we make the FDA more efficient without sacrificing safety? Is there a middle ground that we can find? So, what's the bottom line? The staff cuts at the FDA during the Trump administration raised serious concerns about the agency's ability to protect public health. Eliminating positions responsible for reviewing the safety of food, medical devices, and tobacco products could have significant consequences for consumers. The FDA needs to be adequately funded and staffed to do its job effectively. We can't afford to have an agency that is understaffed, under-resourced, and subject to political interference. What are the long-term effects of these staff cuts? Will we see an increase in foodborne illnesses or medical device failures? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear. We need to hold our elected officials accountable and demand that they prioritize public health over political agendas. What can we do to ensure better food safety? What changes would you like to see at the FDA? I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on these staff cuts at the FDA? Are you concerned about the potential impact on food safety and public health? Let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth analysis of important tech and science issues. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family so they can stay informed. Together, we can make a difference and demand that our elected officials prioritize public health. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay healthy. It's time to take action, to use our voices to protect our health. Share this video, raise awareness, and let your representatives know that food safety is not something we can afford to compromise. The future of our health may depend on it.